Hello, Jerry here with Season 2, Episode 13 of the Ask Jerry Tachoir series. I took a bit of a hiatus from Season 1 during the height of this global pandemic. To be honest with you, I just wasn't feeling it. Definitely had a case of the blue funk and couldn't seem to get motivated. I had, back in March when this first started, I had an entire spring tour out west canceled day after day. Just all of a sudden it just started dropping like flies. Our entire summer jazz festival series went away, and then this fall we had a beautiful tour down south where we were going to go end up in Florida. We actually were going to take a few days off and go to Disney, and everything got canceled. So it was kind of a rough spell and just a time to regroup. But anyway, I've received a lot of questions, and I think this is time to get back into it and answer some of the questions. And one of the questions that has been coming up a lot has to do with recording the vibraphone. And I had several of these, and I picked one. And I also want to say that I actually did a topic on recording the vibraphone, and it's in my Jerry's, 10 tips for the vibraphone. You can go to my website, www.tachoir.com. And up in the very top is an educational tab. You click on that and you'll see 10 tips, and you can study it. But anyway, since this question came up so many times, I thought I would get into it a little bit deeper and talk maybe more detail. This question comes from Mike from Australia. I picked this one, but there was about 3 or 4 more that pretty much asked the same question. Hello, Jerry. First, I just want to say thanks for your video series. They have been both entertaining and educational. I've learned a lot and have been inspired to practice and work hard in my instrument. I'm beginning to work on my first recording project, and I'm having a difficult time getting a good vibe sound. I think you have one of the best recorded sounds of any recording I've ever heard. I love your tone and clarity. Could you share the details you use to get this beautiful recorded vibe sound best mic? And again, this question came up several times, so I thought we'd talk a little bit about it. By the way, before I go too much further, because I always forget, if you want to ask me a question, simply go again to my website, tachoir.com, Tachoir.com, and click on the Contacts tab at the top. Fill in your name and information, ask your question, and it will possibly do one of these videos. Anyway, recording the vibraphone has historically been one of the most difficult things to record, especially in the analog world. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But first of all, let's begin with, if you want to have a good recorded vibe sound, there's a saying in the industry, garbage in, garbage out, which means if you start with a bad sound and it's garbage, so to speak, you can't really do much later on. Whatever you put on tape or on digital recording is going to be what it is. So start with a good vibe sound and work your way from there. So to begin, let's pick an instrument. Find an instrument that you absolutely love and adore, and you love the tone, and this is what you want it to sound like. Then you have to go through your instrument. You have to fix the rattles and the clicks and the buzzes, and again, vibraphone's a very mechanical instrument, so there's a lot of things to make noise and to get recording ready. So you've got to really concentrate on those. Once you get your instrument recording ready, then you're ready to move on to the next thing, which is, again, now the next step in the process is your choice of mallets. You want to find a mallet that you like the sound of. Again, there's a million mallets now out there, and you got to find one that works for you. In my case, I work with the innovative percussion people, and I came up with the Jerry Tachoir JT23 mallets. And I worked about a year to get these prototypes absolutely perfect. And I'm looking for a tone where I don't hear as much attack as I hear the fundamental of the bars. I really want to hear the warmth of the vibraphone bars coming out prior to the hard, abrasive attack. I really never liked the old recordings that you hear way back from the 40s and 50s of vibraphone, because they were very xylophone-ish, very, very hard, brittle mallets, and they just didn't sound that way. I want to hear a nice, warm fundamental of sound with a subtle attack of the mallets. And again, the mallets that I design They allow me to play very soft. They also allow me to really play hard and aggressive if I want to and get a good sound. I can go over to the mallet station and play that. I can go back here on the marimba, and these mallets seem to work very well. So anyway, find a mallet that you like and that will give you the sound that you're like wanting to record. Now comes the microphones. You have to find a decent microphone, and I highly recommend some sort of a in these cases, these are Audio-Technica microphones, and you want to find a good condenser microphone. Condenser meaning it's going to need some sort of power, a phantom power unit to power the microphone. And these kind of microphones give you a really nice sound. So just about any one of these will work fine. But anyway, find a microphone that you like the sound. And I'm very fortunate that I have my own recording studio. So I have a selection of microphones, and I have an endorsement with Audio-Technica. So I'm able to really go through and try out different microphones and find something that I want. Now, there's a rule to microphone placement. I like a stereo sound. I like to be able to hear the left and the right of the instrument, and when you come together, the center. And so I use two microphones, one on the left end, one on the right end. There's a general rule, and it's the 3-to-1 rule when setting up microphones. You want to have, for every distance from your instrument, in other words, if the microphone is a foot from your instrument, then you want to have the separation of the microphones by 3 feet. So that's 3-to-1. And it's very important to do that. Otherwise, you get something called phase cancellation. And phase cancellation happens when you have like a sine wave, or any kind of a wave. When you hit a bar, it produces a wave. And then if the other microphone is out of phase, where this one's going up, the other one's like coming down. So you get this, basically it's a cancellation of the frequency. And if you perfectly cancel the frequency, you actually get silence. You're probably not going to cancel them exactly the same, but you're going to cancel them somewhat, and that you'll produce a very thin vibraphone sound. So remember the 3-to-1 rule. And the way to hear it real quickly is if you go in and if you have a stereo signal, push the mono button. If all of a sudden it just kind of like goes away, gets real thin of a sound, you know you got this phase problem. Then after the microphones, we're going into the recording console or your computer of choice, and then into your DAW, which is your digital software that you're going to be using to record. Now, back in the days of analog, as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, vibraphone, it was very hard to reproduce without distortion. You would hit a bar, and even though the meter said, yeah, everything's looking good, your ear would hear this distorted, wax papery sound. And I remember going many times, and I would say to the engineer, this is distorting. And he was, no, the meters look fantastic. Everything is like perfect. And I says, no, it's distorting. You got to back it down. We got to record it again. You got to. So what happens with vibes is you get overtones and things called transients. Transients are these upper frequencies, an energy source that the ears may not hear, but the recording console and the tape in those days actually heard it and could not capture it, so it distorted the tape, and you got that wax papery sound. Fortunately, in the digital world, we don't have that much of a problem with that specific issue of transients, because in the digital world, there is no information that's captured above 20 kilohertz. So you got from 20 to 20 kilohertz, which is supposedly the optimal ability for the human ear to hear, but nobody hears from 20 to 20. It's, ours is obviously, and as you get older, it changes too. So we don't actually hear that entire spectrum. But if you had absolutely perfect ears, that's probably what you would be able to hear. Now, so we're recording, and you want to try to find a level in the digital world where you stay, maybe the highest peak that you would hit would be maybe -6. You can stay low. You don't need, like in the analog world, where you wanted to hit the tape really hard because you had an underlying noise level where the actual tape is making noise. So you wanted to always have a signal hot enough to be above that noise level. In the digital world, you don't have that noise level. So we could actually record at a lower level. And then later on, if you need more gain, you can always boost it up, and you're not going to have any problem with bringing in underlying noises like you did in the analog world. Now, once I actually record and I got something on the machines that I'm feeling comfortable with. Then you can go in and sweeten. Now, by sweeten, I mean a couple things. You're not going to really change, whether when I talked about earlier, garbage in, garbage out. You're not going to change it. If you got a bad sound, what you're going to get on the recording is a bad sound. But if you've got a good sound that you're comfortable with and it sounds great out here in the studio, and that's what you want to reproduce, then when you go in later on to do the mix, you can go ahead and harmonically adjust certain frequencies. Like I don't like a lot of real high brittle sounds on the vibraphone. So what I tend to do is I'll go into the analyzer, a spectrum analyzer or a graphic equalizer, something like that, and I generally will boost the middle frequency somewhere around 5 to 800 kilohertz. I'll give it maybe a 3 dB boost, and that'll bring out the fundamental middle frequencies and create a really nice sound. And then I usually, it all depends, but usually I'll go ahead and I'll bring down the extreme high end, something around 14 kilohertz to 20 kilohertz range. I'll bring that down a little bit just to prevent that upper brittle sound from getting uncomfortable. And then also, since we only have really 3 octaves and we're not going that low, you could put a filter. It's called a high pass filter, which means it lets all the highs go through, but you can put a high pass filter which cuts the lows off, and so you get rid of like the rumble and the pedal noise. So you can cut that down a little bit. And also the same with the high end. We don't have a real extreme high end up here, so you can put a low pass filter on it, which then will kind of like round off the upper end a little bit so that you don't get the extreme high end that's not really there. You can kind of get rid of the noise. And the object is to try to emphasize the exact frequencies that we have on our instrument and to play it and do the best we can. In essence, this is really all I have to offer in terms of getting a good vibe sound. After that, then the concept of reverbs and chorus and delays and that stuff is a personal choice. I like to put a little bit of reverb, and I usually go for a kind of a large concert hall. In the digital world, you can basically go through a small hall, large room, basement, garage, concert halls, symphony hall. You can pick all these different things and listen to them and decide which reverb you actually like. So I usually go with kind of a large hall, and I like to reduce the tail of it. The tail is the decay, the length after you hit the note, and I try to shorten that so you don't get a lot of leakage. If I'm playing a slow ballad, I might put a little bit more reverb onto it because it just sounds beautiful. But if you're playing a faster beboppy tune or something with a lot of notes, you don't want to have a lot of reverb because then everything leaks together and kind of bleeds. I also tend to, once in a while, I'll put a subtle chorus effect on the vibes, very, very subtle, because it basically takes certain frequencies and it sort of detunes them, and you kind of get a kind of sound to the vibes, and I really like that modern effect. However, I just subtly imply it, and again, it's a personal taste. You have to decide, and a lot of people experiment with things like digital delays and different kind of events like that. Now, be careful with reverb, because as you're assigning reverb to your sound, you'll be listening to it and you'll say, I'm not really hearing the reverb, I want a little bit more reverb. So you turn it up. And then about a half hour later, I need a little bit more reverb. So you turn it up. What's happening is your ear is getting used to hearing that reverb, and it almost like you don't hear it after a while, and then you keep adding more. So what you need to do is step away. Go out of the room for a half hour or something, come back, and then re-listen to what you're working with, and then you'll be like surprised. Oh my God, it's got so much reverb. It just sounds like it's underwater. It's really wet. So be sensitive to that kind of thing and take your time. Find good speakers that you're comfortable with, and then after you get a mix where you think it sounds great, take that mix, go listen in your car, go to your friend's house and listen to it with earbuds or ear headphones, and make sure that what you're actually hearing in the studio is what you will hear all the time and what you want to hear. So these are the things that I can offer to you to try to get a really good vibraphone sound. And again, it's a bit of a challenge. It's something you have to be sensitive to and you have to work at. And if If you have any questions, go to tachoir.com and send me some questions. And I look forward to hearing from you, and best of luck. Thank you so much.